Growing up, a lot of us have been familiar with this story, if not all of us, but I am going to read it to you now as an adult on this podcast. So, once upon a time, there was an old mother pig who had 3 little pigs and not enough food to feed them. So, when they were old enough, she sent them out into the world to seek their fortunes. The first little pig was very lazy. He didn't want to work at all, and he built his house out of straw. The second little pig worked a little bit harder, but he was somewhat lazy too, and he built his house out of sticks. Then they sang and danced and played together the rest of the day. The third little pig worked hard all day and built his house with bricks. It was a sturdy house, complete with a fine fireplace and chimney. It looked like it could withstand the strongest winds. The next day, a wolf happened to pass by the lane where the 3 little pigs lived. He saw the straw house. He smelled the pig inside. He thought the pig would make a mighty fine meal, and his mouth began to water. So he knocked on the door and said, little pig, let me in, let me in." But the little pig saw the wolf's big paws through the keyhole, so he answered back, "No, no, no, not by the hairs on my chinny chin chin." Then the wolf showed his teeth and said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down." So he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the house down. The wolf opened his jaws very wide and bit down as hard as he could. But the first little pig escaped and ran away to hide with the second little pig. The wolf continued down the lane, and he passed by the second house made of sticks. And he saw the house, and he smelt the pigs inside. His mouth began to water as he thought about the fine dinner they would make. So he knocked on the door and said, little pigs, let me in, let me in." But the little pigs saw the wolf's pointy ears through the keyhole, so they answered, "No, no, no, not by the hairs on our chinny chin chin." So the wolf showed his teeth and said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down." So he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the house down. The wolf was greedy, and he tried to catch both pigs at once, but he was too greedy and got neither. His big jaws clamped down on nothing but air, and the 2 little pigs scrambled away as fast as their little hooves would carry them. The wolf chased them down the lane, and he almost caught them, but they made it to the brick house and slammed the door closed before the wolf could catch them. The 3 little pigs, they were very frightened. They knew the wolf wanted to eat them, and that was very, very true. The wolf hadn't eaten all day, and he had worked up a large appetite chasing the pigs around, and now he could smell all 3 of them inside, and he knew that the 3 little pigs would make a lovely feast. So the wolf knocked on the door and said, little pigs, let me in, let me in." But the little pigs saw the wolf's narrow eyes through the keyhole, so they answered back, "No, no, no, not by the hairs on our chinny chin chin." So the wolf showed his teeth and said, "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down." Well, he huffed and he puffed. He puffed and he huffed and he huffed, and he puffed, but he could not blow the house down. At last, he was so out of breath that he couldn't huff and he couldn't puff anymore. So he stopped to rest and thought a bit. But this was too much. The wolf danced about with rage, and he swore he would come down the chimney and eat up the little pig for his supper. But while he was climbing onto the roof, the little pig made up a blazing fire and put on a big pot full of water to boil. Then, just as the wolf was coming down the chimney, the little piggy pulled off the lid, and plop, in fell the wolf into the scalding water. So the little piggy put on the cover again, boiled the wolf up, and the 3 little pigs ate him for supper. Who would have known, would have imagined that the 3 little pigs was such an anointed story? My God. So, I really love reading children's books and watching children's movies, because I know that there is an adult behind all of those stories and movies, an adult that's creative, who's telling stories and using not only their imagination, but their life experiences or what they learned and the things that they have experienced, and telling these stories. And so I think that the effort that it takes to write children's books and children's stories it takes way more than adult movies and stories. But anyways, way more creativity and imagination. So I really enjoy reading them. So I was reading that. Well, I was actually watching the Three Little Pigs movie. I was watching it. And I just was like, whoa, like this brought me back to some scriptures. On First Peter chapter 5 verse 8 says, be serious, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion. In the Three Little Pigs story, it was a big bad wolf, looking for anyone that he can devour. And if you guys go from Matthew 5 to Matthew 7, Jesus is teaching the Sermon on the Mount. He's giving instructions on how to live, how to live an abundant life, and just instructions that we should follow to help guide us, whether it was how to handle anxiety, whether it was how to pray. Like, he's just giving out instructions. Now, if you guys get to Matthew 5 and you see verse 29, and it says, if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Know that Jesus also speaks in parables. Do not, if you have committed sin, just ask for forgiveness. God will forgive you. Get to the root of your issue and do the work. Don't go gouging your eye out, please. But yeah, Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is Jesus teaching and giving out instructions. And he ends his sermon by saying in Matthew 7, 24, Matthew 7, verses 24 through 27, he says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a sensible man who built his house on the rock. The rain fell, the rivers rose, and the winds blew and pounded that house, yet it didn't collapse because its foundation was on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and doesn't act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, the rivers rose, the winds blew and pounded that house, and the house collapsed. Not only did the house collapse greatly. So being mindful, doing the work, right? So the person who built his house on the rock, just like the Three Little Pigs, the one who built his house of brick was the one who worked harder. He put the work in to try to ensure his house was built on a solid foundation, as opposed to the first two pigs. They were lazy. They didn't want to do the work. So they built their house with little to nothing. And when they were faced with something, when something came at them, when the big bad wolf came trying to devour them, trying to eat them, the house got blown down. Like, their safety, their covering left, right? They had to go link up with the person who actually put the effort in and built their house on something solid, the person who worked harder. So I just wanted to share that with y'all. I don't think I need to say nothing else. That's it. All right. I hope you all have a blessed day, and I love you all in real life.